In his diagnosis of the current state of knowledge for the government of Quebec, Jean-François Lyotard predicted an immediate future in which, quote, the direction of new research will be dictated by the possibility of its eventual results being translated into computer language. The producers and users of knowledge must now and will have to possess the means of translating into these languages whatever they want to learn. So Lyotard labeled his diagnosis that we have turned away from other languages, especially narrative language, to computer languages, the postmodern condition. He asserts that this is our condition today. In many disciplines today, it's believed that the computer is the best model of the object of study. This is an operating principle in molecular biology, operations research, neuropsychology, immunology, game theory, economics, and many others. Historian of science Philip Mirowski calls this literal belief in computation one of the defining characteristics of a, quote, cyborg science, a science that does not use the computer as an analogy, but which uses it as a simulacrum of the object of study. For example, Howard Gardner, in his overview and introduction to cognitive science, states that one of the paramount features of cognitive science is this belief, quote, there is a phase that's central to any understanding of the human mind is the electronic computer. Not only are computers indispensable for carrying out studies of various sorts, but more crucially, the computer also serves as the most viable model of how the human mind functions. So for cognitive scientists, people are computers. For molecular biologists, the genetic code is computer code, and so forth. And these are not fanciful leaps of faith, but literal beliefs held by large groups of scientists who work according to a scientific method. I will label this digital ideology to distinguish this effect of computers from something far more pervasive. Digital life leaks outside of professional circles and flows beyond the technical vocabularies of specialist dialogues. Consider these properties of today's computers and networks that flaunt yesterday's common sense, yet constitute axiomatic conditions of digital life. It's not only possible, but usual for someone to be in two places at once. If you're chatting online with someone far away, you're both at your computer and online and offline. The shortest distance between 2 points is not a line. Distance within a network frequently follows the logic of the hub. For example, airline topologies are not Euclidean. Because Dallas is a hub of American Airlines, it can be on the way from San Francisco to New York, even if it's considerably south of where a direct flight would take us. In a world of GPS-enabled cell phones, getting lost will be a strange and difficult to understand event. When we all carry cell phones where the prefix numbers designate only where we bought the phone, not where we reside, then losing touch with friends and family will be a sin, not a hardship. Imagine what a bizarre story the Odyssey will seem to be for a generation that grows up with GPS-enabled cell phones. How could Odysseus get lost for 10 years and not call his wife? Some of the main tropes of Western literature, the quest, the long-lost brother, all these will become incomprehensible, or at least very strange to future generations. These examples are meant to illustrate my point that the digital is not just a condition of scientific knowledge, but rather extends its effects into everyday life by changing what we think is common sense. Software and hardware are both an ideology and a material force that are changing everyday life. Software studies is a means to understand these changes and the implications of digital ideology and digital life. Software studies extends and complements computer science. While computer scientists have the tools to build these new technologies, they don't have the means to evaluate the cultural implications of hardware and software for everyday life. Consider the aesthetics of computer scientists. They understand a piece of software as good or bad according to speed, efficiency, and correctness. Those are all taught in undergraduate computer science curricula. Faster, more efficient software, for example, is said to be better than slower, inefficient software. Correctness is usually a criterion that is introduced to advanced undergraduates. Genealogically, speed and efficiency are criteria inherited from industrial automation, while correctness is a discourse of mathematics. Increasingly, computer science has been adding some new criteria of evaluation to this repertoire. A full list would also include interactivity, user-friendliness, and realism. But even this longer list of criteria is insufficient to the task of probing how everyday life, thinking, and experience are affected by new technologies. Roughly speaking, the criteria of evaluation employed by computer science is still the criterion of functionalism. In 1965, Theodor Adorno delivered a paper entitled "Functionalism Today" to a group of designers, the German Werkbund. Recall that the Werkbund was founded before the First World War, shut down by the Nazis during the Second, and then revived thereafter. It, along with the Bauhaus movement, contributed greatly to what we know as modern design. The functionalism that Adorno was concerned with was the prevailing aesthetic of modern design developed by Adolf Loos, Louis Sullivan, Frank Lloyd Wright, Peter Behrens, and many other designers of the 20th century. Adorno questioned the aesthetic of functionalism in two ways. First, he points out that functionalism's disaffection, even criminalization in Loos's formulation, of ornament, and conversely its ardor for utility, usefulness, purposefulness, and efficiency are particular forms of morality rather than obvious entailments of objectivity. Second, Adorno emphasized that even the functionalism's attempt to avoid style is a style itself. Functionally designed objects and technologies not only do things, but they also symbolize, even if the designer doesn't want them to. When Adorno wrote his essay, many others were also questioning the adequacy of functionalism to evaluate the implications of design. Starting in the 60s, in many areas of design, including architecture, industrial design, graphic design, many designers developed practices that actively challenged functionalism. The Italian Memphis Group and others, the architecture of Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi, German New Design, are all immediate outgrowths of the vein of thought beyond functionalism. So my observation is that those of us in software design are in the same situation as most other designers were 40 years ago. We need to actively explore the question of what shall we do now that functionalism is no longer the reigning criterion of evaluation, the dominating aesthetic of software. Especially during the 1980s, many architects, industrial and graphic designers understood their new anti-functionalist practices as postmodern. As appealing as it may appear for software design to simply follow behind other design disciplines, postmodern design does not offer us a route out of our current impasse. As Jean-François Lyotard, Jean Baudrillard, Paul Virilio, and other theorists of postmodernism have been pointing out for decades, the closed-world thinking of procedural epistemology, speed, and simulation is the very crux of postmodernism. In other words, for software design, postmodernism is not a direction one might aim towards, it's a condition in which we already live. The hope I have for software studies is that it might help us navigate software design to a place where the ethical, aesthetic, cultural, and epistemological implications of computer technology are in full sight.